I have said this before, and I'll say it again. And there will be many people who will object. And if you object, that's fine. But at the end of the day, it is really important that Australia starts to recognise that they can no longer rely on the United States for security. In fact, can't rely on the United States for anything. So, with the mango orange bizarre individual that's president of the United States at the moment, we have to accept that Australia is less secure than it was before. That we've relied upon, as I've said many times, the United States over the last 80 years to provide security for us in our region. Those times are gone. In fact, the reality is that we are becoming, we should become less and less reliant upon the United States because they have indicated that they are not prepared to work with their allies at all. They have now, under the orange, bizarre, incredibly dysfunctional president that they have, that allies do no longer matter. We've seen that in relation to Ukraine. We've seen what Europe has had to do in order to protect themselves. Now the United States have chosen probably to withdraw at the end of the day from NATO. And we in Australia in the Pacific need to understand the reality. And we need to face it, and we need to do something about it. Now, I like to think that any of you here may choose to subscribe to my channel, which would be really nice. Ring the bell for further notifications, put some comments below if you have a different view. But here in Australia, we need to change our policy. Now, something that's come out recently which does need to be noted, and that is the impact that some of the United States decisions will have on AUKUS. What do they think about AUKUS? Well, one thing's for sure. We know that that the orange douchebag in the presidency does not even know what AUKUS is. I've expressed my disappointment in his intellectual inabilities for quite some time, but he is a man who doesn't even care about AUKUS or security in the Pacific. He cares only about what impacts him personally. So we will be left, and I tell you now, we will be left out in the cold in relation to AUKUS. And there's a couple of indications of just that. And one of them was a report in The Guardian which says Trump's pick for Pentagon says selling submarines to Australia would be crazy if Taiwan tensions flare. This is the nominee for Undersecretary for Defence Policy, says AUKUS deal to deliver Virginia-class submarines could leave US sailors vulnerable. He goes on to say, one of Donald Trump's top picks for the Pentagon says selling submarines to Australia under the AUKUS agreement poses a very difficult problem for the US and could endanger its own sailors. Edridge Colby, Trump's nominee for Undersecretary of Defence for Policy, the number 3 post at the US Department of Defence, has previously admitted he is sceptical about AUKUS and said this week he is worried selling submarines to Australia could leave US sailors vulnerable because the vessels won't be in the right place at the right time. In other words, they won't be where the US wants them necessarily because they're sold to us, and obviously we will manage their positions on the globe. In written and verbal testimony to the Senate Armed Services Committee nomination hearings, Colby affirmed Australia was a core ally. Well, that's very thoughtful of you, I think, of the US with us even in our less advisable wars. Well, we've had a few of those. And that he supported the idea of empowering our Australian allies. But Colby argued there remains a very real threat of a conflict in the coming years, particularly along the so-called First Island chain, the first arc of islands out from the East Asian continental mainland coast, including Taiwan, Japan, Philippines and Borneo, and our attack submarines are absolutely essential for making the defence of Taiwan otherwise a viable and practical option. And clearly he believes that what this means is that they will not have the control over them that they would need, that it won't be their submarines, it'll be the Australian submarines, and that therefore their defence in the Pacific would be diminished. Thus saying, I guess, that at the end of the day, he believes that it is unwise for the United States to sell submarines to Australia that they would perhaps need. Also, there's another article that sort of highlights all of this as well. Surface tension. Could the promised AUKUS nuclear submarine simply never be handed over to Australia? An interesting question. Well, probably not. But we need to face that reality as well. The multi-million-dollar deal was heralded as ensuring the security of the Indo-Pacific, but with America an increasing unreliable ally, doubts are rising about the waves. Maybe Australia's boats just never turn up. The fanfare and flags, the AUKUS deal was presented as a sure bet, papering over an uncertainty that such an ambitious deal could ever be delivered. Well, it has been. No, it hasn't. It hasn't been delivered at all, and may never be delivered. It was assured three publics across the two oceans were told, signed, sealed, and to be delivered. Australia would buy from its great ally, the US, no longer a great ally at all, its own conventional armed nuclear power attack submarines before it began building its own. The result being that at the end of the day, we're going to find that the United States is not the ally that we've envisaged them to be, that notion has gone. Australia is on its own, dependent upon those countries in the Pacific who will be further alienated by the United States because they are becoming so isolationist. So we need to make a decision. Albo needs to make a decision about what to do in relation to the United States, and it's about time we started to call them out for what they are, which is a country that has decided that its allies are no longer its allies, that those that were our enemies are now their allies, such as Russia in particular and perhaps China, and that we are on our own and that we need to build our own defences, not spend billions of dollars and send that to the United States. They could build submarines that they will want to own, that they will want to manage, that they will want to control in the Pacific region. So let me know what you think. I think this is a really important subject, and it's certainly going to be something that we're going to be thinking about and talking about for months, if not years to come, as we realise that our ally, the United States, is no longer such. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.